Saudi Cup, and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod Mindful Media and Communication. And as you can see from the description, we are talking about arguments, argumentation, and anything that comes along with it. And no, it's not because I want you to argue a lot. It's because I want you to understand what is happening during arguments. Quick spoiler alert, I'm a bit sick still. I've been sick for a week. Getting better now. Thank you for the concerns. But there might be a few coughs here and there. I'm trying to use AI in the post-production to get rid of it, but I might not be able to get rid of all of them. So apologies for the coughs that might be in here or there. Okay, let's jump right into the episode though before the voice is gone again. So, how to actually change someone's mind without magic, without arguing, with communication. How do we do that? And so, well, first of all, let me tell you what doesn't work. And starting communication and understanding that made me really annoyed, because my first point I'm trying to make today is why logic alone doesn't work. And you know that I'm from Germany. We pride ourselves on being very logical and everything makes sense. And then when you realize that just being logical all the time doesn't mean that you, and I'm using air quotation marks for now, which I don't like, but win arguments, kind of frustrating. But I'm right. I'm being logical right now. Why don't you listen to me? Doesn't matter. In arguments, that doesn't always matter. Right? Just think about it. I'm sure it happened to you. If you ever try to prove a point only for the other person to dig in their heels even harder, you're like, I'm making a good point right now. The other person's like, no, but, or you send someone a fact check article on X or something, and you expect them to change their mind because look, I'm showing you the facts, but then they will still double down on their belief. Yeah, welcome to the frustrating world of persuasion. And yeah, it can be frustrating. Yet the truth, people do not change their minds because of facts. They change their minds maybe because of how those facts are being framed. And more importantly, how those facts, let's be honest, make them feel. So that actually matters. Okay? So in this episode now, the next few minutes, I try to break down some theories, some of the science behind the persuasion, showing you some key communication theories, okay? So a few theories that I'll discuss in a second. The Elaboration Likelihood Model, we had it a few times in this podcast already, short ELM. It's about why do some arguments work, why do others fall flat. We're going to talk about confirmation bias. We had it in our filter bubble episode on the podcast. Why people reject information that contradicts their beliefs. We talk about framing. We mentioned it many times on the podcast. How the way you present something, in this case an argument, changes the impact of the argument. And we talk about a theory that we might not have mentioned just yet, the inoculation theory, why people resist persuasion and how can we actually overcome it. Okay, so those are the few points I jotted down and I wanted to discuss with you. And one more time, I want to make the point that people do not process ideas / information purely logical. That's just not how it works. So if you want to change someone's mind, you need to understand how their mind works. And once you get this, then you can work on the persuasion. Okay? This leads me to my second point. Why facts alone, just like logic, do not win arguments. Okay? So the theory I mentioned earlier, the ELM, Elaboration Likelihood Model, shows you the two paths to persuasion. Okay? So the ELM explains that people, they process persuasive messages in two different ways. You have the central route. Pardon me. and the peripheral route. Okay. So the central route is like deep thinking, logic, evidence. Okay, that's like central, like right to the brain. That only works though when the person is motivated and able to process information. So if you really want to learn something, okay, I'm in class right now, I really want to learn something, then I'm showing you logical stuff, I'm showing you facts, I'm showing you like how this theory works. You're like, okay, you're taking notes, like, I really want to learn it. Okay, then that works, okay? If someone is researching a major purchase, like a car, for example, they read reviews, they compare stats, prices, insurances, and all those things because they're motivated. Okay, that's the central route. Okay? Okay. The peripheral route is the quick one, the emotional one, the surface level one. Okay? So peripheral basically means it works when people are not as deeply engaged. Like when the message appeals to their emotion, their credibility, their identity, for example. For example, a celebrity endorsement, a viral slogan influencing something, so that could be surface level. And let's compare this, right? The deep thinking and the surface level thing. If you're honest, most people do not engage in deep thinking unless they really want to. If you're honest, most persuasion happens on the surface level. Emotion, identity, storytelling. That's what we talk about on this podcast many times, right? So the peripheral route is usually what triggers engagement, surface level engagement first, before anyone even thinks about deep thinking, detailed engagement. So if someone isn't already open to logical arguments, facts alone will not convince them. So you need to engage them emotionally first to even have a chance to present all the logic behind it, all the logic that you already have researched. Okay? So emotional connection first, and then eventually, hopefully, they're opening up so that you can then present all the evidence that you have. The thing is though, it's still very difficult to make people change their minds. And the question is like, why? Why do people resist changing their minds, right? And that leads me to the next theory I mentioned in the intro, confirmation bias. And that concept explains why people selectively accept information that confirms what they already believe, while then, of course, rejecting anything that contradicts it. Why, right? Well, let me give you examples. A conspiracy theorist sees 10 articles that debunk their belief, but focuses on that one sketchy blog post by Alex Jones, pardon me, that supports it, okay? For those listening, I'm taking a sip of water, 1 second. Apologies, the voice was gone. Okay, so another example, a hardcore sports fan refuses to believe that their favorite player cheated. And despite overwhelming evidence, no, he, she, it, they, them would never use steroids, no, never, or EPO or whatever, right? Yeah, no. So you try to focus on what confirms your bias, but you actively ignore everything that's against your bias. Why? Well, because changing your mind feels like you're admitting that you were wrong. Being wrong is uncomfortable. And for some reason, beliefs become part of our identity. So if we challenge our beliefs, or someone challenges our belief, it feels like a personal attack. You're like, you're attacking me? Why? What did I do to you right now? Okay, so those are two of the main reasons why people, why we resist to change our minds. And you see it on podcasts a lot. Well, actually, not a lot. I think podcasts are a great environment in which we can see that happening. That challenging beliefs very often results in like people fighting for their identity. Once you see or you're able to disconnect your beliefs from your identity, you become more open-minded. But it's very difficult to do because we're so stuck with our beliefs. Like, I am my beliefs are me. Which no. Like in theory, logical, right? If someone presents you with new information, there's no problem changing your beliefs. Like I thought this, now I see new information, so I'm changing my beliefs. No problem. They're actually just a logical thing to do. However, in our society, if you're changing your beliefs, like, oh, why are you changing your beliefs like that? You're not sticking up for it? And so that's also one of the reasons why we struggle with changing our beliefs. Okay? We think it feels like we're admitting that we're wrong, and it's linked to our identity. Okay? So again, once you are able to disconnect that, you're like, okay, my identity is not linked to my beliefs. It's not the same. I can adjust my beliefs based on new information I'm learning in life. You will be way more free, open-minded. Okay? Now, from a communication point of view, though, now that we know that, right, instead of attacking someone's belief head-on, which will trigger their defense, you need to bypass that mental firewall. Okay? So don't be like, hey, your beliefs suck, for example. You need to try to find a way around so that they do not feel attacked. I will get to that in a bit. Okay. Last theory I mentioned in the intro, the inoculation theory, right? Why people reject new ideas. And the inoculation theory has been around for a long time. It's been debated in communication theory that does it work? Does it account for something? Does it not? In this case, I think it helps a little bit because it explains how people develop resistance to persuasion. Okay? It's like, oh God, it's such a controversial thing to say in 2025, but it's like, it's not COVID, but it's like a normal vaccine preps your immune system against a virus, okay? So people preemptively defend their beliefs against contradictory ideas. The example is someone has been told the media is biased, right? Traditional media is super biased. Then any factual correction from media gets dismissed as just more bias. It's like, oh yeah, look at this, traditional media, fake news. Right, so it's already been labeled, and so we just stick to that label and add more to it. So the more someone expects an argument, the more they prepare counter arguments in advance. Okay? So to be persuasive, you got to approach from like an unexpected angle, from an unexpected approach. Yeah, okay? If you do the same thing that they are already expecting, they're like, yeah, I knew you would say that. Here's my counter that I prepared already. Like, no, you're not getting anywhere. So if you can take a different stance, a different angle, a different approach, then it might find an opening to be like, oh, wait, let me think about, okay. So that's in relation to the inoculation theory. Okay, but now enough of that, because we want to know how do we actually change someone's mind without just arguing back and forth and shouting, right? And the one thing we can do already is we could use what we discussed in the podcast earlier. We call it cognitive dissonance. Remember last episode? I hope you do. Good. Yeah, so instead of proving them wrong, you help them prove themselves wrong. Cognitive dissonance makes people uncomfortable when their own actions do not align with their beliefs. Let me give you an example. If someone claims to care about the environment, but drives like a super gas-guzzling car, for example, right? Instead of attacking them, you're like, hey, why do you do this? You ask, do you think electric cars are a good long-term solution? It just kind of like forces them to acknowledge the contradiction, without making them defensive. Okay. And I know there are issues with electric cars too. It was just an example. I'm from Germany. I do not promote Teslas. Okay. So this was just an example. Okay. So that's using cognitive dissonance. Okay. Or another thing we discussed on the podcast before, storytelling, framing. Okay. Facts don't change mind. Stories do. So framing shows that how you present information matters just as much as the information itself. Instead of saying, oh God, shit, something coming. Instead of saying, meat production is killing the planet, say, did you know switching to one plant-based meal a week is like taking a car? Apologies, the cough. I do like meat, maybe that's why subconsciously. So instead of saying meat production is killing the planet, you could be like, hey, did you know that switching to like just one plant-based meal a week is like taking a car off the road for 3 months? No one cares me just here, that's just an example, okay? So this reframed version is much easier to accept. And it gives you like an actionable step, yeah, for the audience listening. So you don't attack them directly, they're just like, maybe I could try. I mean, just one meal is not a big deal, and maybe I could try. Okay, so storytelling matters, okay? So one more time. Cognitive dissonance, storytelling. 2 more. Instead of forcing something onto someone, we just plant the seeds, okay? People do not like being told what to think. But they do reconsider like ideas that they feel like they came up by themselves. So instead of pushing, do this, ask questions that nudge them into the right direction. Instead of, you should work out more, you could be like, hey, man, have you ever noticed how much better you feel after you worked out? And I mean, look at you, all glowing and stuff. Damn, so cool. And that encourages self-persuasion, which is 10 times more effective than external persuasion. Okay? And it's same with like it's motivation, right? Internal motivation, intrinsic motivation works much better than always relying on extrinsic motivation. Okay? So nudge them towards it. Positive reinforcement always works. You know yourself from school. And the last thing after this positive reinforcement, my favorite, the Trojan Horse Technique. Agree first, then redirect a little bit. Yeah, people always resist arguments that just feel oppositional. Like, I feel you're against it already. So I'm like already confrontational, right? Bobbing, weaving, touching your points just to get back at you. But if you start by agreeing on something, people are more likely to listen to what comes next. Yeah, that's the typical like yes and strategy, right? Yeah. For example, if someone believes social media censorship is bad, but you want to discuss misinformation, you could start, yeah, so I get why people don't trust platforms controlling speech, but what do you think happens when false information spreads unchecked? Yeah, this lowers the defense already before introducing this new idea that you actually want to discuss. Yeah, you're not saying not having censorship is terrible. Example, not saying I'm pro-censorship. Example, you're saying, like, yeah, I get why people don't trust platforms controlling speech. However, what do you think happens if there's lots of false information out there? What could be done? Yes, and then you can actually still talk about this topic. Okay. So, takeaway. So much arguing with you and trying not to cuff right now. So, what do we take away from this? We take away, don't argue, right? Reframe, ask, plant ideas. You cannot change someone's mind by just brute force. Yeah, difficult learning also for myself. Instead, you guide them to reconsider their own beliefs on their own terms. Okay? People resist usually being proven wrong, but they love discovering new insights by themselves. So use that. Okay? So next time you disagree with someone, don't argue. Try asking questions that forces them to rethink their stance. You watch how this will shift the conversation, make the conversation flow more, be more interesting, more friendly, and you might even reach a point at the end of the conversation in which both of you and the person you're talking to, agree on something and take something away from said conversation. All right? All right, so that's it for today. I hope you took something away from that. Apologies for the sick episode with the coughing and everything in between. I appreciate you sticking with me. Next time again, healthy, fit, motivated. Until then, don't argue too much. Let me know in the comments, like, how do you persuade people in communication and conversations without arguing? For more tips, as always, subscribe, follow, share, like, leave comments on Spotify or wherever you listen to the podcast. And, well, until then, stay safe, take care, and we talk next week. Sawadee Krap.